I woke up this morning with a story. And the story is that I ran out of toothpaste. And the story is that I need to brush my teeth. So I need to get some new toothpaste. Now, this is a great story to have because I want to have clean teeth and I want to be able to, eat food the rest of my life. But what about stories when we hold on and latch on or fixate or freeze on a story that actually isn't serving us? Right? Another story that I have a lot of times is that I got to check my phone. Who's texting me? Who's texting me? Am I getting a notification? What's the next beep that I'm supposed to check out, right? And a lot of times, we don't even notice that we're actually living these stories. In fact, the very way that we function as humans is through storytelling. So I want to talk about today what happens when we can transform our stories from the small egoic stories to what I call the unique self stories based on the book by Dr. Mark Gaffney, Your Unique Self. So think about it. Stories are everywhere, right? We actually usually go about our lives just living our stories. And what do I mean by stories? I mean, it's basically the narrative, how if we were to talk about our day or what's going on, how we talk about it, right? We walk around telling stories to ourselves mostly. And this all started as soon as we created language, as soon as we were able to develop the capacity for language, we, as the self constructs and develops and grows and becomes an individual, it forms language and configures it in a way to actually make sense of our world, right? And so, for example, the story of I've got to fit in, I have to belong here, I have to conform, is a story that early on, if we're able to hold on to that story, we actually fit in and function as a citizen of our society, right? We go to school, we do our chores, right? We, follow the law. We don't lie. We're honest, right? Just sort of fitting in with the norms of our society. So the story of I must fit in actually is an important story to have. Now, what happens when the story becomes a distorted or a fixation of a story? So, for example, when our story of I need to fit in becomes, oh, I don't look like that person, so I don't belong, and therefore there's something wrong with me. And how does that affect our everyday? Well, we walk around sensitive to being rejected, or we avoid certain people, or we kind of collapse and feel like, oh, I don't belong, right? And so that story that we're going to call it the ego story. So the ego is basically the part of us that creates our identity, right? And as we grow up, we need that ego to create our identity. And so the ego creates identity. I must fit in. And then the ego creates an identity of, I must be recognized for my skills, right? I must be recognized or appreciated for what I'm good at, right? I must be smart, or I must be knowledgeable, or I must be skillful, or I must be um, an expert, right? So this story of I must be an expert in whatever, I must be good at something, actually is a really great story because it focuses our attention on creating skills, developing our skills to be able to function in the world. But what happens is when that story of I need to be good at something, I need to be recognized for my skills, becomes I am what I do, and then I lose my job, and that story becomes, oh, I am worthless. I don't have any value because I don't have a role. I don't have a title. I'm not recognized for my skills. And so that story becomes a distorted story, a story that keeps us stuck and small, right? It's because that story is a narrow story that isn't open to other aspects of reality? Isn't it open to the possibility that actually maybe I am good at what I do, whether or not I have a job that says I do that, right? And, it's not just that I am what I do, but I am what I accomplish. That's another story. So another story could be I must achieve. I got to be successful. I got to make all my dreams come true. And again, this is an ego story that gets us, that motivates us to organize our lives in such a way that makes things happen, that puts the power to achieve and make things happen in our own court, right? And so a lot of great things come out of that, right? I start a business. I rise in the ranks of a company. I, overcome an illness or find the woman of my dreams, right? And I achieve all these great things. Now, what happens is that story becomes a problem and it becomes distorted and small when it becomes, I have to predict and control the outcome, right? So I have to predict and control everything in my life, and we don't allow the fact that actually a lot of things are out of our control and we can't predict. And actually, life isn't about making everything, it's not all about us. We start to realize, or when we actually over fixate on this story of I must achieve and I must control everything and predict the outcome, it actually cuts us off from the larger possibility that actually we can be influenced and receive the support of other people. We can allow and make the journey part of our success, and that by not controlling the outcome, but by rather influencing it and then releasing attachment to the results, we oftentimes have better results. Okay? So all of this is what I'm describing as the ego story that gets us kind of, it helps us navigate life. It helps us get to the next step. But when that ego story gets fixated and frozen in place after its expiration date, then it becomes our pathology. Then it becomes our limitation. Then it becomes our attachments. Then it becomes our obsessions. And then we get stuck in all areas of life. So what do we do in that case? How do we hold our stories? Well, we have to realize a couple things. We realize that it's not just happening here. That there's actually, we live in a field, an infinite field of value. Mark Gaffney calls it the field of value. And the field of value is this infinitely large, interconnected web of energy, of information, of perspectives, of love, of potential, possibility. And so whenever we realize that our egoic story is becoming a constraint, one thing we can do is actually be curious about what is possible beyond what I see and what I understand, what I think I am to be. Is there more to reality than what I'm understanding it to be? Is my story too small? So what could be possible if I didn't hold on to this story? And so asking those questions, being curious, opening up to possibility, connects us with that field of value, or the field of information and energy. And it's from that place we can listen. And we can listen to what we call our unique self story. And our unique self story is the story of who I am as not a separate self ego that has to struggle to survive and fight his way to make things happen in the world and against the odds and kind of proving himself, but actually a self who is an expression of this interconnected field of information and energy, a unique expression of this field of value. And from there, we can continuously receive more information, we can open up to a bigger version of ourselves that's actually connected with everything around us and not fighting against it or isolated or alienated from it. The second thing that we can realize is that this interconnected field of value is not static, it's evolving. So our story, our very story, is ever evolving, and it's ever evolving toward more unique self-expression, toward more interconnectivity, so toward more connection with other people and reality and ourselves and the biosphere, right? More connectivity and more wholeness, toward more wholeness. And by wholeness, I mean, the opposite of wholeness is fragmentation. So anytime we feel fragmented or disconnected or alienated, when we're able to open up to that field of value and listen for what could be next, it's always toward more connection, more wholeness, more integration, more self-expression, and ultimately more love. So my invitation to all of us and myself today, whether it's about the toothpaste, about the phone, or whether it's about, the story I tell myself about my brother who hasn't talked to me for 20 years and has hold a grudge or something, which is not true. I just made that up. But whatever it is, the story that we are living, when we can see it instead of be it, we can hold it and actually see, well, what am I missing? What's possible if I don't hold on to this story and open up to something new? And then see the miraculous possibilities that are opening up for you. So on that note, I want to invite you to a free workshop that I'm offering to actually bring you through a process to transform these stories from these egoic stories to the unique self stories. And it's on November 21st at 5 o'clock Pacific time. It's an hour and a half. Check out the link in the comments to RSVP and just come with something that you want to work on, something in your life that you want to break through or move towards, and we'll dissect it and we'll actually go through the stories that you're telling yourself, and you'll leave that workshop with a new opening, a new possibility that is much more aligned with your unique self-expression and your unique purpose and the deepest meaning in your life. So I hope to see you there.